Hey guys, welcome back to Beyond the Box Score. I'm your host Hayat. Today, we're diving into two intriguing college basketball matchups on February 20, 2026, Akron vs. Ball State and Princeton at Brown. I'm gonna break these down the same way I do on camera, thinking out loud, working through pace, recent trends, injuries, momentum swings, matchup quirks, and how these games could realistically play out if the situations line up like the numbers suggest. This is pure analysis, pure opinion, no guarantees, no promises, just me walking you through the slate, connecting the dots, and figuring out what might happen. Alright, let's get into it and start seeing what these matchups could turn into. Akron vs. Ball State, the lean here is over 146.5. Okay, the lean here is over 146.5. Let me walk through why, because when I see Akron vs. Ball State in the MAC, the Mid-American Conference, and I know this is one of the higher scoring conferences this season, that already gets my attention. This conference plays faster than normal, the offenses are better than the defenses overall this season, and when that's the environment we're dealing with, I don't need much convincing to at least explore an over. The total sits 146.5, and honestly, 146.5 doesn't sound like a lot when you start layering everything together. If this matchup plays out like the previous one earlier this season, we already saw a combined 164 points. Not 150, not barely over, 164. And what really connects for me from that game is both teams hit 60% from inside the 2-point range. 60%. That's not fluky perimeter shooting, that's interior efficiency, that's not being able to stop each other at the rim, and if neither team can protect the paint, that travels. That's system-based. Same coaches, same systems in place, nothing structurally different here. Then I zoom out to the head-to-head trend. Last 5 meetings, 4 of the last 5 went over the total. And here's the part that really makes me pause, all 5 games were 153 points or more combined. Every single one of those 5 games cleared 153. They averaged 162 points. So we're sitting here with 146.5, and the recent historical average is 162. That's not a small gap. That's not 2 or 3 points of cushion. That's a wide margin. If this matchup plays out anywhere close to how it has historically with the same coaches and the same systems in place, 146.5 feels light. Now let's talk current form because I don't just want to lean on history. Akron comes in having scored back-to-back 90 points in each of their last 2 games. Back-to-back 90-point games. So they're not just trending up, they're exploding offensively. And pace matters here. Akron is one of the fastest-paced teams in the MAC. They're ranked in the top 3 fastest-paced teams in the MAC. So they're pushing tempo, they're forcing volume, they're comfortable playing in the 80s and 90s. One path I see here is Akron dragging this game into their tempo, and once this becomes a track meet, Ball State doesn't have much choice but to run. Now Ball State hasn't had a really good offensive season. They've been very bad offensively overall, they've been a bad team. But here's the interesting wrinkle, their best offensive performance this year from a points perspective was tied between the game versus Akron and one other game this year. And in that Akron game, they scored 77 points. So this is literally the team they scored the most points against this year. That's not random. That's matchup-based. If this matchup plays out like that one did, Ball State doesn't have to be good offensively in a vacuum. They just have to be good against Akron, and we've already seen they can score 77 in this matchup. Then I connect the pace angle even more. Akron is one of the top 3 fastest-paced teams in the MAC. Ball State has played the other 2 teams ahead of Akron in pace, and they went over the total in both of those games. And they also went over against Akron. So against the top 3 fastest-paced teams in the conference, Ball State went over 3 out of 3 times. That's not noise. That's stylistic. When they play fast, the game goes over. When they play the top 3 paced teams, it's 3 out of 3 overs. If this matchup plays out with Akron pushing tempo like they normally do, history says Ball State games fly over. So I've got 146.5 as the number. I've got 164 combined earlier this season. I've got both teams shooting 60% from inside the 2-point range in that meeting. I've got 4 of the last 5 going over. I've got all 5 of those games at 153 or more combined. I've got an average of 162 in those 5 games. I've got Akron with back-to-back 90-point games. I've got Ball State's best offensive output tied in the game versus Akron with 77 points. I've got Ball State 3 out of 3 to the over against the top 3 fastest-paced teams in the MAC. When I stack all of that together, what connects for me is tempo plus matchup plus history. Yeah, the lean here is over 146.5. Princeton at Brown, the lean here is Brown minus 1.5. Okay, the lean here is Brown minus 1.5. Let me walk through why, because this one is really about trajectory and health and timing. It's Friday, February 20th, 2026. The point spread in this one opened around Brown minus 1, and now it's Brown minus 1.5. That little hook move tells me something. But more than the number movement, I'm looking at Princeton's situation. They're down a starter. His last name is Stanton. Possibly their point guard. He went out 3 games ago. Since he went out 3 games ago, they're 0-3. They've not won. Lost last 3 games. So if this matchup plays out like it has the last 3 games without Stanton, Princeton is struggling to close, struggling to stabilize, and losing that kind of ball handler or starter presence matters. Now on the other side, Brown just snapped a 6-game losing streak last game. So momentum-wise, they just stopped the bleeding. And this is a team that came into the year projected to be way better than Princeton. That matters to me because that tells me talent baseline favors Brown. Things didn't go well early this year, and a big reason was losing Landon Lewis, one of their best players. He didn't play the first 6 weeks of the season, or at least the first month. That's a massive chunk of the year. If one of your best players misses the first 6 weeks, that's going to distort your record, your rhythm, your chemistry. But now Landon Lewis is back. Now they're starting to get healthy. They were injured a lot earlier in the season, and now they're not. Now they're starting to get healthy. They're playing a little bit better. So if this matchup plays out with Brown closer to their projected level, with Landon Lewis back, with health stabilizing, against a Princeton team that is 0-3 since Stanton went out 3 games ago, I see a talent and stability edge on the Brown side. The number is small. Brown minus 1. Brown minus 1.5 now. This isn't asking Brown to dominate. It's asking them to win. One path I see here is Princeton continuing to struggle offensively without Stanton, especially if he is their point guard, because losing that organizer affects everything. What connects for me is timing. Princeton trending down at 0-3 since he went out 3 games ago, Brown trending up after snapping a 6-game losing streak and getting healthier with Landon Lewis back after missing the first 6 weeks or at least the first month. This game might go on my premium selection for Friday if I do release a college basketball play. It almost most definitely will be this one. But for the free play selection here, I'm taking Brown over Princeton. Lay the points with Brown. And yeah, that's why the lean sticks at Brown minus 1.5. Alright, that wraps up the breakdowns for Akron versus Ball State and Princeton at Brown on February 20th, 2026. As always, this is pure analysis and opinion, nothing guaranteed. Just me thinking out loud about how these games could play out if the matchups and situations align the way they look on paper. I'm curious, which spot stood out to you the most? Or maybe you're seeing something totally different. Drop a Z in the comments and let me know your take. More deep dives like this are coming soon. Same raw, messy, thinking out loud format, same deep breakdowns.